Osimhen to Arsenal obviously is my number one, and potentially the chance to be the biggest transfer we've seen in football, other than Mbappe going on a free, obviously. But in terms of actual money spent, one of the biggest transfers, probably the biggest one since Holland going to City 3 years ago.
What's that number going to look like?
I mean, I think his release cost like 108 million euros or something like that. I just think, as we've been talking about, Arsenal need to sign a striker. He's the biggest name out there. They need to make a statement. If they can find a way to win either the Premier League or the Champions League, I'm not saying that they will. I think this becomes a very, very likely transfer. Obviously, we're in a world where Chelsea could outbid us, but I think with the fact that Chelsea won't be in Champions League, probably not in Europe in any way, shape, or form, we have the most attractive project in England. We have probably the most attractive project in the world. If you're Osimhen, now's your time to win. You'll have just step into a team that's already creating more than any other team in Europe. Seems like a no-brainer.
So, a couple questions. One, do you think it's mandatory? What would you say the likelihood if you win Champions League or Premier League that the transfer happens? And what would you put the percentage if you don't win either?
I don't know how much it actually changes how much we would go for the transfer. I think if anything, it just solidifies for Osimhen that this is the right club for him to go to. I think. So
you're saying to the gen public, Arsenal will only be respected as the big club if they win one of those two?
I think to someone like Osimhen, I mean, I'm just saying generally speaking, if Arsenal have come off the back of a huge title winning season of some type, that makes it easier to get a bigger name. I think it's like, it's one thing if we're in Champions League next year, but we end up finishing third in Premier League this year, and Chelsea end up finishing the season strong. Maybe they win the FA Cup. Like, to Osimhen, maybe he's like, all right, Chelsea's offering me more wages, and they're always going to fund the club more than Arsenal's going to fund. That's just how Chelsea works.
Yeah.
Maybe he decides to go there. I do think, and I have some knowledge that we are pushing really hard for Osimhen.
Yeah,
that's
so
our number one target.
We talked, was that episode 1 or 2?
I think 1, yeah.
Episode 1, for any of our new followers, Will opened up early that he has a source at Arsenal. Update from the source is?
He's still our number one transfer target in the center forward position. Having said that, to the general public, the need for Arsenal to get a striker is much larger than what the club sees it as.
And what does Will see it as?
I see it as, it is definitely our number one priority, but I don't think it's like 1 and 2 is down here. I think it's like 1A and there's like a 1C, which is to add one more player to that midfield.
Yeah, I think for me, what will ultimately decide the title is either Holland and De Bruyne are going to show their class, or Salah and Nunez, and then Arsenal's not going to have those killers, and then everyone's going to be like, all right, we absolutely need to get a killer number 9 in.
I tend to agree with you. The only reason why I don't constantly talk about it is because nobody scored more goals than us in the Premier League this year. We have the best goal differential. Just by numbers, it doesn't appear on paper that we're in this huge need for a center forward. However, I do agree with a lot of what you say, which is that we do need a center forward. But I do think there's also a part to this for Arsenal where they may spend big money on an 8. They may sign a 40 or 50 million pound left or right winger to kind of be an extra winger for Martinelli and Saka. And I think you might see we have a very talented young striker on loan who's scored 8 goals since January in the Austrian league, Mika Biereth, who's probably going to come in and take Nketiah's spot. Jesus will still be around. And I think you might see Martinelli play some center forward if we do spend big on a winger. So that's why I think it's not necessary. Like 3 months ago, I would have said there's no doubt we're signing a big name center forward. But we've already ruled out Ivan Toney. There's a couple other strikers we're going to talk about who I don't think we're interested in. And then if we don't get Osimhen, I think they kind of relook at what the transfer strategy is. But I do think Osimhen will happen.
So I agree to Osimhen. How old is he? Like 27?
26.
26? While you pull that up, my only concern is if he's young enough, I think the prospect of a Chelsea... 25. He could look at the prospect of a Chelsea, maybe want to get involved in that project where they can pay a little more. Or, as we've talked about, PSG
is the
with
biggest
no
rival.
Mbappe, they're going to be looking to spend, which I have someone I'm excited about potentially going there. All right, so should we move to number 2? Number 1 target for Will, Osimhen to Arsenal.
And I agree with you before we move on. I actually do think PSG is our biggest rival.
Yeah.
I don't think Osimhen...
You don't think Chelsea?
I think...
Do you think... Because Nicholas Jackson's playing a little bit better of late, do you think Chelsea go out and sign a big name number 9 in the summer?
I think they do, but I think they spend as silly as that sounds, I think they spend 40 million fewer pounds than...
Yeah, that does sound silly.
It sounds like whatever.
No, but at some point they're going to have to draw back the spend.